Welcome back, Catholic Connection. Religious liberty. Thanks be to God, there are organizations such as the American Freedom Law Center, Alliance Defending Freedom, Beckett Fund, all those wonderful people who work so hard to defend us and defend our rights, our constitutional rights, for goodness sake. And someone who does that every single day is our friend Robert Muise. He's right in our own backyard in Ann Arbor, Michigan, American Freedom Law Center, and in studio with us this morning. Deja vu all over again. You were just on with us for the pledge drive, but we appreciate you coming back on. So, Rob, this is good news, thanks be to God, a victory, correct? Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Great to be with you again. Yeah, in so many respects, it was a breath of fresh air for me. I mean, we've been battling this issue with just these simple displays on this 40-acre property, these Stations of the Cross, this mural wall with the image of Our Lady of Grace and a small altar on 40-acre rural property in Genoa Township. And this dispute's been going on since 2020. In fact, we filed our original preliminary injunction motion in 2021 after the township ran to a state court and got an order to have them remove the displays. Went up to the Sixth Circuit one time, came back down. I had two judges rule against us on the preliminary injunction. Went back up to the Sixth Circuit, and finally, we on Monday, the Sixth Circuit ruled unanimously. And quite frankly, what should be a fundamentally, straightforward case. And if you read that opinion, they made it very clear, 3-0, that this was in fact an egregious violation of our client's fundamental rights. And it's interesting because we sued under this federal statute which protects religious exercise in a land use context called the Religious Land Use Institutionalized Persons Act, or RLUIPA. But it also, it essentially provides as a matter of federal statutory law the protection of free exercise, and it was pretty clear that this is a violation. And this is just a preliminary injunction, just to get at least this preliminary allowance of using the property. Another part of the injunction was the township also prohibited us from using this property for any organized gatherings. I mean, you got to be kidding me! It was us. So they struck that part down. So now they can, they've had masses out there before all of this nonsense started with the Bishop Boyer and it's always been very peaceful, and it's really shocking to me at the lengths that the township is going, and that we're trying to get a small, really a modest adoration chapel, the St. Pio Chapel, 95 seats.
Yeah, I covered that story in Michigan.
Yeah, this is all part of it. So that's the next step, is because they denied the special land use application for that. I mean, to submit these applications, the one for the chapel and with the prayer campus included, it cost them like over $30,000. I mean, it's just crazy. And to think just to have a small, I mean, my goodness, if you're a neighbor and there's 40 acres property next to you, and they're just going to build a small adoration chapel, 39 parking spaces. And I challenge anybody who goes, go to a CVS or any little shop, look in the parking lot, count how many parking spaces 39 is, and you'll see it is minuscule. It's minuscule. 39 parking spaces, a small adoration chapel, 95 seats on a prayer campus. It's 40 acres. They're only building on 5 acres of the 40, and those 5 acres have already been cleared. They're leaving all the wooded nature because it's a very serene place to pray. And they have the Stations of the Cross Trail, which was part of the injunction we got. They're also going to have other prayer trails with other different aspects of the Catholic faith with statutes and signs and so forth. But it's going to be a place where people can go and just quietly pray, enjoy the nature, and adore Christ in the adoration chapel, and it's amazing the battle we're going through to just get this. Thanks be to God, we had we got this victory. And I talk to my clients about this. I think about in the Old Testament how God stiffened the neck and hardened the heart of Pharaoh because the people hadn't suffered enough before he was going to free them. And I just keep thinking, when I see some of these decisions from the judges and I just shake my head. It's like, my goodness, what world am I living in? And I just keep thinking that's we perhaps haven't suffered enough. And it's interesting because Saint Padre Pio is their patron saint, and Cano Burke is the spiritual advisor for this whole project. And he told Jere Palazzolo, who's the head of Catholic Healthcare International, that he said, look, when you chose Saint Padre Pio to be a patron saint, there's going to be some suffering along the way. So just be prepared, gird your loins, as it were. And so it's just a long battle. This was a very, very good victory. Like I said, for me, it was kind of a breath of fresh air and kind of a shot in the arm, because I do this every day, and I shake my head. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Do we not have fundamental rights anymore in this country? and 40-acre properties with just this modest prayer trail. Meanwhile, they've admitted in depositions and everything, next door you could have 200 people over to watch a football game, or put up birdhouses the size of the Stations of the Cross, or they have, for example, in Halloween, you can drive. There's a one house that had this 12-foot tall skeleton, right, in the front yard, no permits necessary, and and their claim is that, it's public safety. I saw that statement, actually in light of this decision, one of the township officials said, we're concerned now about public safety. It's like, public safety?
Public safety?
One of the concerns for having structures on the property, or signs, or religious displays, and that sort of thing, is that you want it to be distracting to motorists. You don't want to cause any safety issues. This thing's in the woods. You can't even see any of these. There's 12-foot statues right there at the edge of the road, right? There's nobody that's inspecting that to see if it's going to fall into the road or anything. And when I asked the township's witness about that, her response was, that's cool, right? So this 12-foot statue's cool, but a 10-foot tall image of our Lady of Grace is
God
somehow,
forbid, pun intended.
Yeah, it's such a it's a nuisance, right? That's what they did when they sued in state court. They sued to remove these as a nuisance.
But they owned the property. Catholic Healthcare International owned the property, and so they did not have the right to do what they wanted, as long as if they were in. Obviously, they had to follow certain rules and regulations and laws. But this is their property; they bought it, and the people, when they purchased the property, must have known there were going to be something Catholic on the property. Yeah, there certainly was a reasonable expectation, because the building churches and other places of religious expression was a permitted use in that zoning district. What this comes down to is, number one, I think there's an anti-Catholic sentiment in the neighborhood out there, and at least others in the township that are getting a voice somehow on those making decisions. But at the end of the day, it's this petty tyranny of people who are in charge of zoning boards. I mean, it's inherent in the nature of government, right? It's what our founding fathers understood, in a very real sense, when they created the Constitution, is to divide powers, have separation of powers, protection of fundamental rights. Because when you have this kind of power, and anybody who works in zoning, they see this, right? There's these petty tyrants in these little townships that just want to control every aspect of your life. They get their back up when somebody like us comes in and we have to sue them and we get a favorable decision. So I'm curious to see if there's going to be an adult in the room there in the township who looks at this decision and says, you know what, we got to end this litigation now, because quite frankly, this is a case where we get our attorney's fees too, and they're running up pretty high after 3 years. It's somebody over there in the township say, look, we got to. It's inevitable that we're going to lose this case. Ultimately, we got to allow them to build this chapel, and let's get this thing done. Because we're going to do everything we're going to put in a commercial driveway, put in the deceleration, acceleration lanes. The whole project with the chapel was approved by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission even said on the record that CHI went above and beyond all the requirements as necessary, but yet the Township Board then denied the application. So it's just a long battle. So we've been doing this for 3 years, and there's going to be years ahead of us if they're not willing to just. So they could push forward though if they still want to fight this though.
Well, yeah, because we still have to get the chapel on. So that part of it. This is a preliminary injunction. So we still got a ways to go. We still got to get through full discovery and everything else. So this could take another couple of years, but hey, we're in this for the right reasons and to fight the good fight.
See, they count on people getting weary and tired, yet they don't know you, a Marine.
They do now.
Yeah, they do now. Robert Muise, more with Robert Muise of the American Freedom Law Center. A victory for right now, and hopefully it will continue. More on the importance of religious freedom in our country and how we have to fight for it. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for tuning in to EWTN's Catholic Connection, the show co-produced by Ave Maria Radio and EWTN. You can find us online, EWTN.com and AveMariaRadio.net. Rob Muise, a big friend of ours at both EWTN and Ave Maria, and was in earlier this week to support the radio station during our fall membership drive. Many Catholic radio stations are having their drives right now because we do fall and spring, and everybody kind of follows a similar pattern around the country. So if you are not aware of your local station having a drive, please check it out, because we need to work together hand in hand again with our radio affiliates around the country in EWTN. So Rob, you and I were talking during the break. I've had the opportunity to have Jere Palazzolo on the show many times, both in the local and national hour of Catholic Connection. I've also emceed an event with Cardinal Burke and Bishop Boyer and Jere, with wonderful people working on this project. And we were talking during the break, you couldn't ask for nicer neighbors in a community. And imagine the peace the peace having this prayer area right there. And yet, oh no, can't have them move in. We don't want Jesus and Mary, can't have them. It just boggles the mind.
No, it does, and we also had mentioned about how they just you mentioned how they just want to wear people down, and
right,
and Catholic Healthcare International is a nonprofit organization, and I can tell you right now, even with the litigation for everything we've had to battle on the state court side, on the federal court side, I mean our attorneys' fees are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, right, and we're doing this pro bono for them. And they wouldn't have the funds to be able to to fight these types of battles, and I think the other side kind of makes that calculation when they're doing the things that they're doing. But yeah, it's like, so what would you want as a neighbor, even if you were anti-Catholic, as it were? Why wouldn't you want a prayer campus, a wooded prayer trail? What would you rather have? Somebody pull in there and build a pig farm or something? I just don't get why.
Or a rowdy bar or something,
No, and there's all sorts of and the neighbors have all sorts of events. I mean, we continue to keep track of that and take photographs of houses on that same street that have cars parked up and down the road. 20, 30, 40 cars all over the place, and different events with hundreds of people in their homes. But that's fine. But you can't have the 39 cars parked in a rural parking lot to go to mass or to quietly pray on the trails. And it's interesting because just down the road, just several miles away, the township itself has its own park on 38 acres, so it's 2 acres less. Has multiple sports fields. It has like this water misting park thing. It has play sets. It has this large pavilions, and oh, by the way, it has 200 parking spaces. It's like, so when you're comparing, it's like, how is it that just a few miles down the road, you have this secular park, as it were, that's far more impactful by a magnitude. And yet, they're concerned about this small prayer campus.
It's not about that, though. It's about persecution of the church, and it's about telling people of faith that you're not welcome here, and we think you're judgmental and mean and self-righteous and everything else that goes with that. We're talking with Rob Muise of the American Freedom Law Center. A victory right now, but think about this. So you mentioned this started, 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, in 2020 is when they got the property. We filed the lawsuit in 2021, but from September of 2020 until we had to finally sue in June, we just kept running into roadblocks. They tried like I said, they even submitted this onerous application that they were demanding. It cost them $30,000 at the end of the day to make all the requests that they demanded for the approvals. And by the way, it was approved by the Planning Commission. It was approved by the Road Commission. It was approved by the township's own experts. They hired this, incredible engineering firm, CHI, at great cost to make sure they had all their, T's crossed, I's dotted, everything else. And then it went to the board, and the board denied it. And and we're at no choice that we have to sue. And we sued them under federal law, under the federal, the First Amendment, as well as that federal statute, the Religious Land Use Institutionalized Persons Act law.
So you have 3 years here in this case. We had the case of the Michigan farmer who eventually won, but that case went on for 6 years. Yeah, 6 years.
Yeah, it's cases. I tell my clients that these things can last up to 5 years, and especially if you go up to the Supreme Court, if you try to give it, just adds even more. This case is already in 3 years without even getting into discovery right now. So we haven't even had a scheduling conference on setting briefing schedule and everything else. It's already gone up to the Sixth Circuit twice. So these battles can take a long time. But you know what, you can't be weary. You gotta stay the fight. And
because they're trying to wear you down, as we were saying earlier before the break. That's why this is so important. So what other areas in terms of different cases that are out there, what you're getting a sense of as a religious freedom attorney, Rob, that you're very concerned about? Yeah,
well, it's always, to me, one of my biggest concerns is freedom of speech, right? Because that it ties in well with free exercise, because people of faith, they always want to label that speech as hate speech, and actually, in this it's somewhat related, because it was for religious reasons that many of these parents in Loudoun County, Virginia, spoke out at the school boards about some of this curriculum. And oh my goodness, have you seen some of these books and things that they're putting in the elementary schools from the LGBTQ? They're grotesque. They're pornographic. And parents speaking out, and as the Attorney General Merrick Garland has gone after these parents as domestic terrorists, right? He famously, he issued that October 4th memo, and with great public fanfare, to put a shot across the bow and creating these threat tags for these parents who just care about their children and want to express their concerns to their school board, to silence them and to have them sit back down and think twice about whether or not they're going to petition their school boards to challenge these so-called progressive policies. I'll be arguing that case, so we sued him on behalf of a bunch of parents, including half a dozen of them in Loudoun County. And I'll be arguing that case next Friday, a week from this Friday, in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit.
Wow.
Against the Attorney General. And it's that's the court he came from, right? He was a judge in the D.C. Circuit, but that's the court that has jurisdiction. So, but these battles they have to go on. And the other part of it, and this thing I try to remind people all the time is, look, I'm just a lawyer, right? I'm the advocate. Unless I have clients like CHI or these parents in Loudoun County who say, you know what, I'm gonna raise my hand and I want to fight this. I want to stand up. That's the only way I can bring these lawsuits.
Right.
Because you have to have people that are willing to stand up and to fight for their freedoms. Right? Ronald Reagan famously said that our freedoms weren't handed down through the bloodstream. They must be protected and fought for each generation, unless they're lost. And we've seen this slow erosion of our fundamental rights. And everybody has a responsibility in this.
Right.
And the courts have said time again that to uphold a party's constitutional rights it promotes the public interest, because everybody has an interest in protecting those fundamental freedoms. And we're not talking about these newly created rights that come out of nowhere, right? We're talking about these God-given rights that our founding fathers understood and enshrined them in the Bill of Rights. And first and foremost of those are the right to freedom of speech and the right to free exercise of religion. And those two are very much related. And that's the area, the main battleground that we're seeing. And you mentioned about the case up in Wisconsin. Feeding
coming
the
up
poor.
next.
Yeah, feeding the poor is that religious exercise? It's like, it's so fundamental. The fact you'd even have to ask that question shows where we are as a nation. And that's one of the points I've made about this case too. It was a breath of fresh air. I'm so thankful to God for this this ruling from the Sixth Circuit. But my goodness, the fact it took this long and through so many judges to finally get a unanimous panel to do what should be plain to the eye and under the law, that's an indictment of where we are as a nation.
Absolutely. But thanks be to God for strong people like you, Rob, and your willingness to fight this on behalf of those who want to stand up and protect our rights, our God-given and our constitutional rights. Rob Muise at the American Freedom Law Center. The website is AmericanFreedomLawCenter.org. Again, AmericanFreedomLawCenter.org.